What's up, my kings, queens, and everyone in between? Welcome back to another episode of Spirit Experiments. DRACKAGE and Drakking were announced and released to much excitement, with many people jumping to try Drakking decks as soon as they became legal at the start of October. However, the deck has not nearly lived up to the hype in terms of results. Drakking decks, while capable, don't seem to have the consistency needed to triumph in a world where efficient, cheap Elestrals and removal reign supreme. In Moonrise, Drakking decks will receive support in the form of Schnark, a searcher for both Drakking and Rock in a Hard Place, that will certainly bolster the Kraken's claim to the throne. However, with Moonrise still months away from release, I want to see what Drakking may still be capable of in the Daybreak metagame. Based on what I've seen from watching and playing against Drakking, a big weakness of many Drakking decks, and hear me out on this, is that they focus too much on Drakking. While Drakking is certainly very powerful if it destroys even one Elestral in battle, there are several hurdles it has to clear to get there. While it is naturally immune to Tsunami, it can be waylaid or removed by the ever so common Gorgons, PTAs, shields, and altars. While a Rock in a Hard Place can potentially remove a back row before Drakking or their sibling Kuribis hit the field, it doesn't always work well in practice. Since the Drakking player will usually need to commit their normal cast to Eddy or Drakid before casting Rock, the opponent will usually choose to destroy their Elestral, either to keep their back row alive if it deals with Drakking, or to simply deny the revive effect and leave Drakking open for attacks on the next turn. If you're running Kuribis, the situation is arguably even worse, as while Kuribis' pop effect can enable a board clear without running into shield, it requires some setup, and Kuribis itself dies to basically every common form of interaction. While the Deadly Duo of the Deep can enable powerful swing turns and act as solid finishers with proper timing, they don't seem reliable as a deck's main strategy. However, Drakking has one strong quality that might yet save its claim to the throne. The Drakking line on its own only demands 7 card slots at most. Additionally, each of the 3 required cards are individually strong. While Drakking is the flashiest of the 3, Drakid can threaten attack position Elestrals of any size, and Rock's ability to act as a slightly worse thunderstorm or earthquake is often underrated in my opinion. I believe Drakking has major potential to be run as a small package to supplement broader strategies, providing additional removal and punching power to decks already running water spirits. Today we'll be evaluating the strength of such a package in a deck archetype that many assume to be much weaker post-banless, but has been recently putting up results, and that I believe still has huge potential to take names, especially with the DRACKAGE filling some holes left by the limits. Get out your medical scrubs and strap in for the long game, because today's Spirit Experiment is Drakking Heal, aka Care Drackage. Here are today's materials. As a disclaimer, I am by no means an expert on heal-based strategies, so the main deck inclusions and ratios could change with further experience and testing, but this is what I landed on for an initial build. Heal decks like this one aim to win a game of attrition, using a combination of removal and healing cards to trade favorably in spirits, essentially stalling until the opponent runs out of resources. The limits to Earthquake and resting on your laurels left the strategy down 4 copies of its most efficient forms of removal. However, these holes can be filled well enough to keep the strategy afloat, with a tiny bit of adaptation. A majority of our materials are standard inclusions in a heal deck, with some ratios being different to accommodate our Drakking package. Let's start with the more standard part of the deck. First up are healing Elestrals in 3 Sluggle, 1 Jachagua, and 3 Quackle, as well as our Elestral based removal tools in 3 Eddy and 1 Boombat. We also have 3 Astrabbits and 2 Ash Rabbits for finding and recurring the tools we need in each given game. More traditional builds of heal run 3 copies of each of the healers and Boombat in the main deck, but I've cut down the copies to accommodate the deck space and spirit math needed for our Drakking package. Speaking of, we have 2 Drakid, 2 Rock and a Hard Place, and 1 Drakking. The Drakids fill a similar role as Boombats, with some upsides and downsides. Drakid can't deal with defense position Elestrals, and requires something to attack into the Elestral it swaps attack with, opening us up to counters like Shield or Don't Poke the Bear. However, unlike Boombat, Drakid stays on the board both after successfully using its effect and after getting Gorgons, meaning the opponent has to invest something extra to remove it to prevent us from repeating the swap effect next turn. I think the trade-off is worth it, especially given the potential for the kid to become a king. While the rocks certainly aren't as strong as the 2 Earthquake copies we lost to the Limits list, the opponent will often choose to make it essentially resolve as Earthquake. And if they have an Elestral they really want to keep, the Rune Destruction can pave the way for a Drakid, Eddy, or Boombat to clear it anyway. We can often give opponents the illusion of free choice with this card. Since the Ascension enabling aspect of Rock is less important in this deck, we can lead the turn with Rock, then spend whatever removal ends up being necessary based on what stays on the board. One other funny thing to mention with this package: since search effects can activate without a legal target in deck, we can cast Rock with Eddy on board and activate the Ascension effect as a bluff. While unlikely to work, this could bait out anti-Drakking cards like Pandora's Box at no cost to us. For the rest of our runes, we have 3 Ambrosia, 3 Nectar of the Gods, 3 Cryoblast, 1 Earthquake, 1 Resting, 3 PTA, 3 Shield, and 3 Tsunami. We aren't maining Gorgon's Gaze, which has precedent from previous topping heal lists. We want our back row to be as spirit efficient as possible and to remove Elestrals from the board so that our opponent must keep burning through their spirits to re-establish presence. We also don't have any high value Elestrals besides Drakking, so it's better to let effects or attacks go through and remove the offender on our turn rather than use 2 spirits to save a 2/2. This version of the strategy has even less reason to run Gorgons since we're main decking lunar cards, so it's even easier to side in the cheaper dense fogs. Next, we have a beautiful rainbow of a spirit deck. 2 Teratlus, 4 Owloon, 5 Zaptor, 6 Leviathan, 2 Vipyro, and 1 Flurmine. I wish I could justify running 2 Flurmine in main since we're running 3 Cryoblasts, but I didn't feel comfortable going any lower on any of the other spirits. Many of our key Elestrals and runes require Leviathans and Owloons, and they're also needed for Drakking's revival effect. Going to 4 Zaptors would mean Quackle only gets max value if we cast it with our last Zaptor, meaning we can get cut off from our Thunder cards if it gets Gorgons. The 2 Vipyros are also essential for being able to recast or re-enchant an Ash Rabbit, and gives us the option to loop Vipyros by targeting one with Ash Rabbit's effect. Maximizing the chance of seeing Cryoblasts is worth keeping 3 in main despite the 1 Flurmine, especially since we have 5 cards that let us recover a spent Flurmine if needed. I don't have enough reps with this deck to know exactly what the side deck should look like, but here's what I have for now. We've got 2 Gorgon's Gaze, 2 Dense Fog, the other 2 Boombats, the 3rd Quackle, the other 2 Drataguas, Lavalith, 2 Arcoliths, 1 Flurmine, and 2 Vipyro. With that long-winded rundown out of the way, Let's find out if our theories hold up in a field test. But first, if you like this type of content and want to see more, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Thanks! This match is up against Water-Wind Position Change, and after mulliganing, I cast out a Dratagua to get back one of the waters I mulliganed. This might have been a misplay and I maybe should have just expended to draw, but you live and you learn. I go ahead and set one and pass it back over. My opponent starts out with a Nectar of the Gods to draw two. They then cast out a Sorlet. They set two and swing into the Dratagua, taking it out. My turn, I cast Cryoblast, targeting the Sorlet. After that, I cast out an Ash Rabbit. Target the Dratagua, a Flurmine, and the Cryoblast, and my opponent gives me the Flurmine. Set one, and pass it back over. My opponent casts out an Eddy to swap the Ash Rabbit to attack. Tries to swing over, but I go ahead and Tsunami to swap it back to defense. On my turn, I go ahead and expend to draw. Then set two, pass it back. My opponent casts out another Sorlet. They use the effect to expend to swap my Ash Rabbit to attack once again. They swing in, taking it out. And they swing in for direct as well, forcing me to expend one. On my turn, I cast out Nectar of the Gods to draw two. Then cast out another Nectar of the Gods because I drew it off of the other one. And then cast an Ambrosia, healing back a Zaptor, an Owloon, and a Leviathan. I then cast out one of our newcomers, DRACKAGE. Swap attacks with the Sorlet and try to swing over it, but my opponent has a Tsunami for it. My opponent casts out an Astrabbit and performs the effect, then swaps the Sorlet to attack and tries to get over with the Eddy, which does succeed. I will Shield of Achilles targeting the Astrabbit, but I do take one from the Sorlet as well. On my turn, I cast a Resting on Your Laurels to get rid of the Sorlet. I then cast out another Ambrosia, lucky me, getting back a Vampiro, an Owloon, and a Leviathan. Then cast out another Rock in a Hard Place, targeting the Eddy and the back row behind it. And my opponent lets the back row go down. I then realize that I've made a massive mistake with the Ambrosia and only have one Zaptor left, but I still go for the Quackle and it gets Gorgons. My opponent read it correctly, unfortunately. On their turn, they cast out the Astrabbit again and swing over with the Eddy, and it's looking pretty doomed at this point. I don't have many spirits left. I believe I drew an Astrabbit as well on my turn. I cast out an Eddy and attempt to swap their Eddy to defense. And then I swing into the Rabbit, taking it out. My opponent's turn, they cast out a Verituka, swap their Eddy to attack, and they swing in for the Verituka, and I have no back row, so can't do much about it. I'm going to take another one from the Eddy. I cast out another Ash Rabbit. Unfortunately, I only have two of my Ambrosias, so I can't force my opponent to give it back to me, and they just give me back a Cryoblast. At this point, I do a little thinking, but realize it's over and go ahead and scoop it up. Rough game. With our field test complete, let's discuss conclusions and avenues for further research. The most important future research point is how this deck compares to the more pure heal stall build, which just top 4'd the recent case tournament in Kokomo, Indiana, using Race to the Top as its new removal card of choice. The purer version seems to be stronger for a few different reasons. While this build has not performed terribly in my testing so far overall, it struggles a lot into beatdown focused decks, as you saw. For one, since such decks don't rely on stadiums or divine runes, Rock in a Hard Place becomes much weaker, since they can more freely let their back row be destroyed in order to keep up the pressure, especially with this build's lower count of healing cards. Additionally, many Elestrals common to these strategies are either water or can easily be misenchanted with water, neutralizing our tsunamis. Drakking, unlike Boombat, is vulnerable to Tsunami itself, and struggles to accomplish much needed board control in this matchup. Another issue with Rock in a Hard Place, and the build overall, is the spirit math. Since Rock requires 2 spirits, and the Drakking package uses a spirit type your healers can't recover, you can easily find yourself in late game situations where you just can't cast the removal you need to survive, even if your heal effects resolve. I maintain that Rock's ability to destroy back row does have benefits, but it likely isn't worth the downsides in this strategy in particular. While I think this build has some potential, the purer build is definitely the better choice for now, especially with beatdown strategies remaining a prevalent metagame threat. But as always, I want to hear what you think. Comment below what you think of Drakking as a supplementary package in heal or other strategies. And if there's anything you'd like to see changed or featured in a future experiment, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching, and happy labbing.